What's up guys, Maelstrom here. If you enjoyed, then like and subscribe and leave a comment for the next part so I can keep on making these awesome videos for you guys. Chapter 6. You have served me well along with your family. Do not worry, for they will be spared, soothed the leader as he let his hand affectionately rub her cheek. You need not fear for their safety, for they will be protected. Besides, they need only to travel through our tunnels to arrive to a zoo. So don't worry my dear. Hanabi Imuto consoles Naruto as he caresses her cheek in order to soothe her worries into submission. All we need is for the branch family to follow you into a zoo where they will be received with open arms. And you know that the moment they step within the tunnels they are forever outside of Konoha's clutches. Besides, you'll be the one with the pleasure of ending the tyrannical reign of the main branch family, as their shocked expressions try to make sense of why their precious and perfect Hanabi Haim is the one killing them without so much as breaking a sweat, added Naruto as he grabbed her chin ever so gently and showed his Cheshire grin in an effort to completely vaporize her remaining uncertainties. This of course had the desired effect on his adorable Imuto. Really, I get to kill those old fat fuckers? Asked Hanabi with her white eye shining with what many would call innocent mischief. You're the best Narune. Now unfortunately you have to go back to playing the condescending Hyuga princess for a little while longer until it begins, stated Naruto with a slight frown before he kissed her forehead and dismissed her. Now that he was alone, he decided there was no further need for him to stay there. A few minutes after she was out of sight, several seals surrounded Naruto out of nowhere before causing a dark cloud to begin consuming Naruto's being. The last thing anyone would be able to see of Naruto was his sadistic, bloodthirsty grin that ensured nothing but delicious and satisfying suffering to those that went against him. With the Uzumaki Namake's family, currently Minato Namikaze was doing paperwork inside of his office within the cage tower of Konoha. Now normally he would be using cage pensions to help him speed through his work, but he was going through one of his depression periods. These started immediately after he was woken up from his genjutsu-induced coma. They would start randomly throughout his day, but there would be some days spread sparsely throughout where he had no such feelings of depression. However, today was not one of those days. While he was doing his paperwork, there was apparently a new holiday that the civilian council desired to have passed. The holiday would ensue approximately 1 week before the actual anniversary of Naruto's escape from Konoha, and would allow the civilians and any ninja that wanted to join to burn a Kyuubi with Naruto on top of its head. The moment Minato finished reading the article, he quickly shredded it into tiny particles of paper with his wind element and finally used his mastery over his wind element to cause the particles of shredded paper to flow into the garbage, where it turned to ash. There were special seals marked within the trash can using chakra in order to cause any documents that fell inside to be instantaneously turned to ash for safety reasons. He then sent the ANBU to go and pick up the civilian councilman that tried to get such a holiday passed, knowing that he was Naruto's father and was finally deciding to try and fix his relations with his son, that is until he escaped using such raw strength that not even Minato was capable of touching him. Now Minato was training alongside those he considered as family in order to bring Naruto back and show him that they had changed, as well as trying to change the public's opinion of Naruto, considering that for several years they were led by their hate to believe that Naruto was the Kyuubi reincarnated in a human body. While over time he had received great support, and now over 70% of the overall population believed that Naruto was in fact human and that he was the victim, he still currently had approximately 30% that believed he had been corrupted by the demon spawn and they were the saviors of their holy village. Also about 2% of those 30% were rather wealthy families that lost family during the Kyuubi incident. These 2% sponsor the rest of the 30% into causing public riots and defacing public property with images of the heinous crimes they may commit on Naruto's person if he were ever to return. So for the past several years Minato was forced to deal with this on a nearly daily basis. However, he would merely take it in stride and hope that one day he could get these ignorant, hate-driven people to see reason without having to resort to violence. Why? Because that was the penance he gave himself for all the pain he caused his firstborn child. With Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze, Kushina was currently within her room getting ready for her quick trip to a zoo to deliver their invitation to the next Chunin exams that were being held within Konoha in a matter of months. Although Kushina had her own motives for wanting to go there, she wanted to make sure that a zoo was under Uzumaki control and not having its ancient clan secrets abused by some power-hungry fools that knew not what they were tampering with. And she was anxious to meet any family that could have also survived the Third Great Ninja War. So with those thoughts and hopes in mind, Kushina finished sealing all possible essentials that could be required and needed during this mission. She was wearing skin-tight black ANBU pants with blood-red shin guards and ninja sandals. For a top she wore a skin-tight black long-sleeve shirt with mesh armor underneath and arm guards that were a similar color to the shin guards. On her hands she wore black fingerless gloves with metal plates on the back part of the hand and on the palms. Her luscious crimson hair was done in a ponytail while her forehead protector was placed around her left leg. Now that she was ready, she quickly shunched into the Hokage's office in order to receive the scroll along with her two other team members for the duration of the mission. Back at the Hokage's office, Minato was still dealing with his paperwork when Kushina suddenly used the shunshin to appear inside of his office, and to his apparent distress it was the regular standard Konoha shunshin, which while causing random leaves to appear also causes a small draft of wind to surround the user for a few moments. Now normally this wouldn't cause a problem, but since she appeared inside of a closed room and there were papers with nothing holding them down except for gravity causing all the papers to go flying everywhere. At the sight of dozens of documents flying every which way, Minato's face became blank before he suddenly began banging his head repeatedly on his desk, causing the wood to splinter every so often. Why do bad things always happen to good people? Blubbered Minato as he had anime-style tears flowing down his cheeks while a cloud symbolizing his righteous depression floated above his head. Now as all this is happening, Kushina is simply standing there with an embarrassed flush across her face, since it's her fault that he's like this and because she's married to that whining baby. Ahem, coughed out Kushina in slight irritation considering she was in a hurry. This immediately knocked Minato out of his depressions and sent him into cage mode. Junin Kushina Uzumaki. Your mission is simple. You are to establish contact with the village of Azu and ascertain whether or not they will be a threat to our village. This is under the guise of inviting them to the upcoming Chunin exams so as to extend friendly relations with their people in their cage, explained Minato as he interlocked his fingers in front of his face, giving him a powerful and serious atmosphere. Kushina understood the grave importance of establishing friendly relations with Uzumaki, especially if it happened to be under the control of someone with foul intentions against Konoha or any of the other hidden villages. The fallout, both politically and physically, could prove to be catastrophic for not just Konoha but for the entirety of the elemental nations. Many would scoff at this, saying that a new village would be unable to cause such destruction, but if they were to hear the word Uzumaki in the same sentence, then they would automatically reach for the nearest weapon in reflex. Why, you ask? Because the ninja of Azu were considered to be gods in human form. Their prowess in the field of seals was unparalleled and undeniable, and if the people of the new Azu were able to learn from her ancestors' teachings and intended to use them for their own profit or worse, for revenge, then neither cage nor army would be able to stand in their way and hope to come out alive and in one piece. Understood, Hokage-sama, responded Kushina before grabbing her mission scroll and leaving through the open window. But before leaving she quickly gave her husband a peck on the cheek and whispered something into his ear, causing his face to light up like a certain Hyuga princess when she is within the general vicinity of the Konoha public. It seemed as though that whatever Kushina whispered into his ear caused Minato to become re-energized as he attacked the threat of paperwork with renewed vigor, never noticing the fact that the amount of paperwork on his desk had increased by 100-fold. With Kushina, she had just exited the primary gate for entering and exiting Konoha moments ago and was heading towards the place closest to Azu that was allies with Konoha and had access to boats capable of sailing all the way to the primary entrance to Azu. Considering all those factors, only one logical option was left: the Land of Waves. Not only was it a measly 20 miles away from Azu, but it also had friendly relations with both Konoha and Uzumaki. With this thought in mind, Kushina believed that they could use the Land of Waves to establish a peaceful treaty with Uzumaki and maybe gain access to her old family compound, which was at the edge of Azu and contained several mementos from her youth. Her other motivation was the fact that Naruto may have found his way to Uzumaki and was either a civilian there or a ninja there. So with those thoughts in mind, her eyes shone with a flame of determination usually seen when she trains against her pupils and other fellow ninja. She was going to Uzumaki. She was going to where she was raised. She was going to find her firstborn child. Unfortunately for her, he would not be as she had remembered him, for the child she remembered was but a mask created to survive. And now he no longer just survived, he was the hunter and everyone else was the prey. With Naruto was currently training the team of genin that he planned on sending this year for the Chunin exams that he knew that Yuzugakure was going to be invited to. The team consisted of Inari and only Inari. Yes, the very same Inari from the Land of Waves. Naruto saw much of his younger self within Inari and decided to make him his apprentice, the one who would eventually succeed him as heir to Azu. Of course Inari knew not of this, but once Naruto felt that he was ready he would tell him of his destiny. But for now Naruto was too busy enjoying beating the crap out of Inari to even consider telling him yet. And Inari was too busy having an intimate relationship with the ground to be able to hear Naruto tell him about his destiny anyways. Come on Gaki, don't tell me you're tired already. We've only been training for 13 hours, taunted Naruto with a sadistic grin on his face as his 10 tails moved around beside him in a playful manner. Oh, how he enjoyed torturing his precious pupil. This was always the highlight of his day. Shut up, besides you're only a few years older than I am. If you call me by that nickname then I'll call you by yours, yelled out Inari in frustration. Naruto simply laughed at Inari's supposed threat. Really? And what nickname is that, Gaki-chan? Taunted Naruto once more as his grin grew even larger and his narrowed, giving him an impression of a snickering fox. His sharpened teeth didn't help him either in trying to deny such a fact. You asked for it. I knew sensei, yelled out Inari with a smirk on his face at his teacher's reaction. Naruto immediately froze in place. His tails were frozen, unmoving, and his eyes were shadowed by his hair. His grin had disappeared at this point and he only looked to have an impassive expression on his face. However, slowly a grin snaked onto his face and his eyes once again became visible, eliciting a gasp from the young child as he paled in despair. While his face showed the innocence of a fox, his eyes showed the ferocity of a wolf. Inari. Run, and run he did. For the next few hours all the people within the village would hear from the training grounds were the cries of pain and agony coming from a certain individual. Once Inari's punishment was over, Naruto decided to carry the poor brat over his shoulder as his tails moved around playfully and his grin shining ever so brightly, showing how rejuvenating it was to train his precious little apprentice. As he was walking through his village he was on the receiving end of many bows and smiles and the like. He would always return the bow, smile, and wave to each of his citizens. To him they were part of his family whether or not they shared the same blood as him. In many of the hidden villages there was a code that the shinobi and especially the kage were expected to follow. The village shall come first, family second. Naruto considered to be utter shit. His response to such a statement was, fuck that shit. Family shall always come first here in Azu. After all, what better family than the village that you protect and protects you right back? This of course caused his popularity to rise to fanatical levels as well, making him look like a man who cared for the lives of his family. It also helped that he was more than powerful enough to follow up on his promise of protecting his family. The ninja would often consider him like a second father or like an older brother no matter their age. His popular nickname amongst the ninja population was Oni-sama, especially amongst those below the rank of Chunin. Of course they are considered Chunin in the eyes of Azu, but in comparison to the ninja in the other hidden villages these Chunin were as powerful as elite Chunin. That thought only caused Naruto's grin to widen, because if the Chunin could be considered Chunin then what would the Kage no Shisai be ranked? His precious pupils would easily be on a level far beyond those of the Anbu, and having transcended from the level of the Sannin would be able to easily defeat armies without so much as a scratch. They were however unable to defeat their Kage, but any other Kage they would most likely be able to defeat with only one missing limb as consequence, which Haku could then heal. Haku was the village's main healer and was training the ninjas of Azu in the arts of medicine as well. Naruto had made intermediate healing capabilities a requirement for becoming Chunin, and after that point it became optional but recommended. This way casualties of Azunin would be considerably lower than those of other villages. Unlike Konoha, Azu trained the hell out of its academy students and made sure they were ready for the real world before even considering sending them out on missions. Now when considering this, one begins to wonder that if the regular students and ninja of Azu were this powerful, then how is it that in such a short amount of time they were able to become so powerful? Well, Naruto easily explains this away to any outsider, saying that they are simply teaching these brats better than they are. However, the truth of the matter is that through the use of extremely high-level seals, Naruto was able to create an enormous hyperbolic time chamber which could house several hundred people at a time. One day outside the hyperbolic time chamber would equal a full month within it. This allowed the students to graduate from 4 years of the academy within a month and a half. At that point these students would not be allowed to return into the hyperbolic time chamber until they reached the rank of Chunin. Currently Naruto and Inari were not inside the hyperbolic time chamber, but Naruto's and Inari's shadow clones and blood clones were undergoing training within the hyperbolic time chamber in order to make sure Inari would decimate any opposition he may face in the Chunin exams. He was also planning on having Inari sign the summoning contract for the foxes. He knew Yuki would simply love to have Inari as her family's summoner, and that Inari would fit in perfectly with the foxes. Maybe in a few more weeks once the Chunin exams start. Of course by then any enemy he faces within the exam will forfeit the moment they paired up with him. Thought Naruto has made sure to not disturb Inari from his well-earned rest. Of course that didn't stop him from playing with the boy's hair with one of his tails, though this distracted him from where he was walking, making him crash into the door of his own house. Kami fucking damn it. Who the fuck decided to put a fucking door right in front of me? Groaned out Naruto as he rubbed his now comically swollen nose with a few tick marks on his head. That would have been Yuzaki-sama, informed one of the wave operatives under his command as they attempted to hold back their laughter. One of them was standing perpendicular to a telephone pole a few feet away. Another was upside down standing on the bottom part of the roof of the house that was sticking out at the edge, and the last one was right next to the door. In Azu they had ninjas that were in most aspects similar to ANBU but much more powerful, and according to Naruto they were more badass in comparison to the ANBU. So he decided to name them Wave in honor of the village hidden in the waves which integrated into Azu a few months ago. Now although these wave operatives are powerful, they are nowhere near as powerful as the members of the Cage no Shisai. Yay, very funny. Let's all laugh at the most powerful being in existence just because he crashed into a door, ranted Naruto in a sarcastic tone of voice as he continued to rub his bruised nose with an annoyed expression on his face. Anyways, didn't I tell you guys that you had the day off? After all, it's not like anyone is going to attack me here, and there is lesser chance still of me getting injured. I mean, after all, who could possibly injure the legendary Juubi no Okami? Asked Naruto rhetorically, not expecting an answer, though he still unfortunately received one. Ono, probably an enemy whose signature weapon is doors. And if we aren't there to protect you from the wooden doors of evil, then what would happen to our frail Yuzaki? Retorted the wave operative with a black mask that had an open mouth in the center and no other features. The rest of the wave were trying their hardest to contain their laughter, which was evident in the way they were holding their sides from the pain of laughing for long periods of time. This only served to annoy Naruto even further before a light bulb randomly appeared above his head along with a mischievous smirk and glinting eyes on his face. Also, you like jokes, do you? Well then, here's a joke for you. You three get to be my secretaries for the next week. Have fun dealing with the paperwork, yelled out Naruto as he entered his home, laughing maniacally while the three wave operatives simply stood there pale as pieces of paper with only one thought on their minds. Fuck with Kushina. Kushina was currently only a few minutes away from the entrance of the village hidden in the waves where her daughter and her team had gone through their first C-rank mission, even if the team from Azu did all the heavy lifting. However, that wasn't what was plaguing her mind at the moment. No, at the moment Kushina was wondering if Naruto was somehow in Azu as one of its ninja. While she knew that she shouldn't get her hopes up, she still allowed a small ray of hope to shine within her heart that was riddled with despair and agony. Maybe he had gotten into the village and was going to participate in the upcoming Chunin exams. That thought gave Kushina her second wind as she sped over to Wave as fast as she could without the assistance of Chakra, which, while no Mato guy, was still pretty fucking fast. However, once she arrived, the small village of Wave no longer looked to be as desolate or as broken as it once was. The village looked to be full of life and hope, with fishermen showing off their catches of the day and traders setting up shop in front of their boats to show off their wares. Apparently she had been standing there frozen for a little while since a random man in robes that looked to belong to royalty began walking up to her. He wore robes of a vibrant red with golden lining around the edges, as well as pants that the same vibrant red with the same golden lining. For footwear he wore black black wooden jita with golden swirls resembling whirlpools. He also wore a wooden rice hat on top of his head, obscuring most of his face from view but showing the gray beard to the red-headed kunoichi in front of him. Kushina used her sensor capabilities to determine whether or not the man before her was a threat. His chakra capacity was equal to that of an elderly man that lived his entire life as a civilian. She also felt no ill intentions coming from him but noticed an anomaly that drove a wave of fear deep into her heart. There was a seal of unknown origin, at least to her, that she had never seen before. However, that was not what truly frightened her. What truly caused fear to claw at her heart and mind was the fact that the seal was made of chakra and that it had somehow merged with the elderly man's chakra coils. For someone to create a seal from their own chakra, they had to be at least a level 7 seal master, but in order to have one merge with a man's own chakra coils is unheard of. Theoretically, it should be impossible, causing both the applier of the seal and the one who is receiving the seal to die, but yet here is living proof that the impossible has been done. Immediately Kushina stretched the boundaries of her sensing abilities and analyzed all of the other citizens within the vicinity. Her eyes widened in absolute terror. In each of the citizens, there was a seal placed in the exact same area. In the chakra coils around the right breast, the seal had the chakra coils flowing through it as well as around it. The chakra outside of the seal would be a light blue while the seal within was a shining silver. Clearly whoever placed the seal was extremely skilled, extremely dangerous, and had silver chakra. And to be able to keep this many seals active simultaneously should be impossible for any human being, even if they were a Uzumaki. Hello, my name is Tarzuna and I'm the head fisherman around these parts. Is there anything you need? Inquired Tarzuna as he removed the hat, showing his facial features to the red-headed kunoichi before him. He had a simple pair of glasses with graying hair. He looked to be around 50-60 years of age and a recovering alcoholic considering the size of his belly and the stench on his breath, or rather lack thereof. I was simply stunned by the beauty of the village. How is it possible that it was fixed and renovated so quickly? Questioned Kushina as she stood there amazed and transfixed with the complexity and wonder of Wave. Well, as you probably already know, Wave had a trading contract with Azu which also included them assisting with our repairs. When I first read about that in the agreement, I thought that they would simply give us money to hire people, but instead the Uzumaki himself helped rebuild most of the buildings you see here. Everything you see here is thanks to the generosity of Uzumaki-sama, explained Tarzuna as he led Kushina to one of the nearby ports with a boat ready, seemingly waiting for her. Now before you ask, yes, we were expecting you. Uzumaki-sama informed us that a Kanahanin would likely arrive soon. He also asked us to give you safe passage to Azu so that you may deliver your message without further delays, explained Tarzuna as he noticed her caution towards the boat. Seeing that he was motioning for her to enter the boat, she climbed aboard with slight hesitance and her muscles noticeably tensed in readiness for anything that may happen. Once she was on deck, she analyzed her surroundings, noticing that there was a female ninja in a blue combat type dress with long auburn hair and seafoam green eyes. She also had a bust that rivaled Kushina's. Kushina wasn't bothered by this at all, if the twitching of her eyebrow was anything to go by. Aside from the auburn beauty in front of her, Kushina sensed no other ninja on board, causing her to visibly relax. Hello, my name is Mai Momoki and I shall be your guide to Uzumaki, stated Mai with a bow at the end. I must say, Uzumaki-sama predicted that you would be the one sent to deliver his invitation. He will be most pleased, said Mai with a grin on her face. Her eyes glowed slightly with a devious glint in her visible eye. Her last statement caused Kushina to furrow her eyebrows and narrow her eyes. She had suspected that she might have been lured to a trap because of her heritage. However, she could not back down now, even if it seemed like a trap. She couldn't abandon Azu again. Of course he is. Now then, I would like to arrive before the sun goes down if you please, demanded Kushina in a somewhat polite version of a straightforward demand. Mai's only response was a smile that sent shivers down Kushina's spine. The lone visible green eye filled with amusement as well as an underlying layer of anger towards her. Her smile hiding the smug smirk her mind showed. However, without further ado, Mai had the ship's captain start heading towards one of Azu's various entrances. Within a few hours they had arrived to what seemed to be the center of a large ocean with no signs of land within view. Kushina's eyebrows rose within her eyes were like purple rivers of confusion and internal turmoil as her muscles tensed and her fingers twitched towards the seals on her arms concealing her weapons. However, she soon noticed massive movement directly ahead of the boat. What she saw caused her eyes to widen in shock and slight terror mixed with hysteria. The boat was heading towards an enormous, whirlpool. The entire ship was moments away from being destroyed by the whirlpool ahead, and none of the crew were doing anything to prevent the upcoming destruction. In fact, they were acting as though this were a normal occurrence rather than a life-ending disaster. Just as the ship reached the beginning of the whirlpool, they could feel the way it shifted suddenly in accordance to the strength of the whirlpool. Kushina immediately used chairs to keep her feet planted to the ship and covered her body in chairs chains as a form of armor. As reflex, she closed her eyes and brought up her arms to cover her face. She expected to hear the screams of the crew, the shredding of the wood, the destruction of life. She expected to feel the water surrounding her body, the ship breaking apart under her feet, and the chakra chains to shred apart from the force of the water. However, she neither heard nor felt any of those things. All she heard was laughter and muffled snickering. Her eyes immediately snapped wide open in shock as she immediately released her chains and stopped channeling chairs, noticing that the ship's crew along with Mai were either outright laughing at her, Mai, or covering their mouths with their hands to muffle their snickers. Everyone else, "Ha-ha-ha-ha, that always G gets the newcomers," "Ha-ha-ha-ha," roared out Mai as she tried her best not to fall on her ass. Once more the chakra chains erupted from Kushina's lower back like numerous golden tails waving around dangerously. But then her snarl turned into a gasp of surprise as she looked at her surroundings. Her chakra chains dissipated into thin air as she slowly dropped to her knees. Tears began flowing down her cheeks as she covered her mouth with both her hands. They were beautiful traditional Japanese houses with children running through the streets wearing kimonos and yukatas. There were ninja in the streets and on the roofs having conversations as well as spending time with their families. There were beautiful flowers everywhere, and straight ahead was the Izukage Tower, made of stone that showed no impurities, with hundreds upon thousands of seals placed upon it for not only the Izukage's protection but for the protection of Izu and its citizens as well. She was home. She could remember the times when she was a child running through those same roads. She could remember how her grandfather would show her the view of Izu from the balcony of the tower. She remembered all of her family that had died in the invasion and all the friends she lost as a child. She remembered all the good memories as well as all the bad ones. However, despite all the pain, she couldn't help but smile at how Izu was prospering now under its new Izukage. She then recalled something that her grandfather once told her several years ago. Flashback no jutsu. 30 years ago in Izukage. Currently Kushina was sitting on the railing of the balcony on the Izukage Tower with her feet swinging over the edge, humming a tune to herself. Her face was slightly pudgy and her hair barely reached past her shoulders. She wore a loose burnt orange kimono with red linings. Her hair was tied back into a small ponytail with two bangs framing her face and a loose bang going down to her nose. Her eyes glimmered with a childlike innocence that would soon be lost to the horrors of war and humanity. She was smiling at the village unbeknownst to her of the dangers it would soon face. She was suddenly grabbed from behind and placed upon a man's shoulders. Squealing in delight, Kushina immediately knew who it was that had grabbed her from behind. Gigi! Kushina shrieked out in utter joy and happiness. Since both her parents had died before she could form a single lasting memory of either of them, and with the rest of her immediate family having died in action several years prior to her birth, the only one left to take care of her was her grandfather Sato Uzumaki. He was the current Izukage and a ripe 74 years old. Not bad for an old fart, huh? He had faded red hair that reached down to his mid-back and was all tied back into a large ponytail. He wore a golden kimono with a detailed dragon design stitched into the bottom left side going around the back and ending with a head roaring into his right shoulder. The dragon itself was black in design with eyes brighter than rubies. For pants he wore black karate pants with a golden dragon going down each leg. He wore no footwear, claiming it simply interfered with his interactions with the earth. His own eyes were red in color and he had a scar going from his cheek to above his left eyebrow. "Hey Kushi-chan, how was your day at the academy?" asked the wise old Sato as both he and Kushina gazed upon the beauty of Izu. "Great Gigi, but our teacher asked us a strange question today that no matter what we answered with, the answer was still wrong," replied Kushina with a slight pout on her face as she rested her chin on top of his head. "Ha-ha, well, what was the question? This old man still knows a thing or two," chuckled Sato as he held her legs to make sure she didn't lose her balance. "Well, the question was, what makes our village so beautiful?" explained Kushina. Sato began to laugh, causing Kushina to pout. However, before she could voice her irritation, Sato had removed her from her shoulders and was carrying her in his arms before he jumped into the air without the assistance of chakra. He easily reached an altitude of 200 feet before plateauing at that height. However, rather than falling back down to the ground, they remained absolutely stationary in the air. It was as though Sato was walking on air. "Now my dear granddaughter, I want you to look down at the village and tell me what you see," stated Sato as he held Kushina safely in his arms, making sure that she wouldn't fall to her death. Kushina could see the houses filled with families and the streets filled with merchants. She could see the children playing in the parks and the ninjas training in the fields. She saw everyone in the village and could feel everyone in the village. Everyone, despite their differences, breathing as one, living as one, their hearts beat as one. "I see that you've noticed it, haven't you? The one thing that separates us from the other villages. We are all family." Those other villages believe that the village should come before family. They believe that the suffering of their own family is justified so long as their village survives and thrives. However, we do not believe that. We believe that family will always come first. And here in Azu, everyone is family despite our differing blood. We will always protect one another to the dying breath, for that is what it means to be an Uzumaki. And should your family fall in battle, then you lie in wait, sharpening your fangs until it is the right moment to strike, until it is the time for revenge, explained Sato as Kushina stared at him with wonder and admiration in her eyes. At that moment she swore to uphold those beliefs until the day she died. Unfortunately, she would break that vow decades later. Flashback no jutsu. Kai. New tears flowed down her cheeks once more as she recalled that once precious memory that she had long forgotten. She realized that had broken her word, and worst of all, she had failed not only her grandfather, but all Uzumakas that upheld that belief. She was a disgrace to the Uzumaki name. She had stopped in her search for justice for her clan once her kids were born. She had abandoned her family that had died in Azu and the one that had ran away a few years ago. Time and time again she had failed her family, but no more. A new flame had been lit in her eyes, a flame far more powerful than the will of fire that the village of Konoha claimed to have. This flame was the flame of retribution. This flame was the flame of justice. This flame was the flame of the Uzumaki. She stood up and wiped away her tears. Her eyes, now filled with a renewed determination, glowed with the ferocity of a dragon. She walked up to my Momoki and stared her right in the eye. "Lead me to your Uzukage," demanded Kushina with all the determination of a true Uzumaki. "Gladly," was Mai's response. It seems as though she still holds the Uzumaki spirit within her. I wonder what Naruto-kun has planned for her once he sees this, wondered Mai as she smiled at Kushina before taking them towards the Uzukage tower. They jumped from roof to roof at a normal pace, enjoying the view that the village had to offer. However, as Kushina kept moving, she noticed that little of the villagers were of Uzumaki descent, yet they all bore the Uzumaki seal on them. The Uzumaki seal is placed on a person as proof that they are indeed Uzumaki. This was a village of outsiders. This is not what her grandfather would have wanted. A frown spread across Kushina's face as she sped up a bit in anticipation of pointing this out to the Uzukage. Within a few minutes they had arrived at the entrance of the Uzukage tower, but rather than going in through the front doors, they simply stood there. Kushina was about to voice her concerns when Mai placed her right hand to the wall and channeled some chakra into the wall, which activated a seal at their feet. A flash of light later and they found themselves right outside the Uzukage's office. Kushina, however, looked to be suffering from extreme motion sickness and as a result emptied the contents of her stomach into the nearby trash bin. As she was retching out the contents of her stomach, Mai walked over and began patting her on the back. "Don't worry about it. This happened to everyone on their first try as well. You should feel better in a little bit," comforted Mai as she recalled her first time going through that means of transportation. Naruto still sometimes had nightmares of the wrath that followed. "You good?" One nod was her answer as Kushina got up and walked towards the doors of the Uzukage's office. She was nervous of what kind of man Harem might be. Was he interested in exploiting Azu's secret for his own benefit? Was he planning on declaring war on the elemental nations for their involvement with Azu's destruction? Or was he simply seeking to make Azu what it was once considered as, a village of gods? Each possibility frightened her to her core. However, what she did not expect to see once she opened those doors was to find the Uzukage with the Uzukage head over his head sleeping on top of his desk while his shadow clones were completing his paperwork. What she did not expect was to find her own son in the Uzukage's seat sleeping while his shadow clones were working around the office. She did not expect for her son to have long silver and black hair. She did not expect to see her son with icy blue eyes that could freeze over hell. She did not expect for him to have long sharp nails resembling claws. She did not expect for him to have large fangs jutting out from under his lips. She did not expect for him to look so fit. But she sure as fucking hell did not expect for him to have 2 silver canine ears and 10 fucking ass wolf-like silver tails sprouting out from his lower back. And then Naruto whispered out Kushina at an almost unnoticeable volume. However, Naruto as well as his clones were able to hear her perfectly well due to the twitch in his ears atop his head, as well as all of them turning to face her while the original lifted up his head from the desk, rubbing his eyes away of drowsiness. He blinked several times before realizing exactly who was standing before him in his office. The rest of the clones had already gone back to their work as if nothing had happened. "Ah, Namikaze-san, it's about time you got here," exclaimed Naruto as he released a yawn. A visible flinch came from Kushina, not expecting this kind of apathy from her own son despite all the pain she must have put him through. "And Naruto-kun, you shouldn't be in the Uzukage's seat like that. You should know better than to bother a cage," chastised Kushina in an attempt to dictate who the parent was here and who the child was. However, Naruto for one was not going to stand for this. "Of course I do. But isn't that exactly what you are doing now, you fucking hypocritical excuse for a mother?" asked Naruto with a sinister grin on his face. Kushina's face morphed into an expression that reflected pure shock and emotional turmoil. On one hand, she was angry at him for referring to her in such a way, yet she could not truly find it in her heart to say she was not a hypocritical excuse for a mother. She was an Uzumaki. Uzumakis are always supposed to be there for their families. However, all she did was abandon him and ignore him during his times of pain and loneliness. She wasn't worthy of the Uzumaki name. She realized that. That's why she wasn't surprised when he called her Namikaze-san rather than Uzumaki-san. But no matter what obstacle she had to overcome, she was determined to somehow fix their relationship. She was determined to make them a family again. "I know I made some mistakes," but was all Kushina managed out before being interrupted by Naruto's rage. Some mistakes? Some mistakes? You made way more than some mistakes. You completely destroyed my childhood. You and that Namikaze bastard treated me like an outsider in my own home. You made me feel as though I was no better than trash. Did you know that it got to the point to which I tried to kill myself multiple times? But when I tried, I would fucking heal every single Kami damn time. So don't you dare try to waltz in here and act as though you are my family, let alone my mother. Am I clear, Namikaze?" roared out Naruto as he released his pent-up anger and frustration that he held towards the Namikazes for ruining his childhood, even if he owed them for leading him towards the path to throwing away his humanity and becoming a primordial god capable of anything. It would take a lot for them to be able to earn back his forgiveness. Most of Naruto's lovers as well as close friends and family believed it to be impossible for them to earn his forgiveness. Hell, even Naruto and Okami believed it impossible, but the threads of fate might have more in store for the family than what was once believed. Kushina at this point had all of her emotional scars ripped wide open once more as she truly learned the circumstances of Naruto's life. She had never expected the pain to be so bad that he would have considered suicide to be an option, let alone carrying it out and healing each time he tried. She couldn't even begin to imagine the kind of mental and emotional scars he must have because her foolishness, because of her husband's foolishness, and because of the village's foolishness. She knew now that she had little to no chance of repairing the bond she had with him all those years ago. She also knew that there was no chance of that bond returning to how it once was. It would always have some doubt embedded within it, some suspicions lying around waiting to strike should the chance be given. I understand, but no matter what you may think of me, even if you are justified in doing so, I will always be your mother. We will always have the same blood flowing through our veins. We are still family, Naruto-kun. I just want us to go back to being the family we once were. Is there truly nothing I can do to make that wish of mine a reality?" pleaded Kushina as she got down to her hands and knees and begged for his forgiveness. She was prepared to do anything for his forgiveness, no matter the cost. Naruto was silent for a rather long length of time, as though lost in thought. His eyes were scanning her body movements for any signs that she was lying. His ears twitched as they analyzed the rhythm of her heartbeat, looking for any signs of her words being false. His nose tried to find any sense, any increase in output of chemicals that would indicate that she was lying. He was hoping to find anything that would help him call her out on her lies, for him to continue to vent his anger and rage out on her. However, he found no signs that would indicate that she was lying, and that angered him most of all. However, he knew that now was not time for his petty anger. He had a village to run, and Kami damn it, he would run it to best of his abilities. Get up were the only two words that he said, yet they held such coldness, such fierce apathy that they sent an emotional blade through Kushina's heart. She knew it was a long shot that he would forgive her so readily, but she had to try. She had to at least show him that she was sincere. I could sit here and yell at you for hours. Hell, I could do for days, on how I suffered in that hellhole. However, I shall be the better person here and drop the subject for now. Now I suggest you proceed with your mission before you waste any more of my time," declared Naruto as his cold blue eyes seemed to cause the temperature of the entire building to drop by at least 30 degrees Fahrenheit. I see. But in order for me to proceed, I need to speak with the Uzukage. Now would you please tell me where he is, Naruto-kun? Explained Kushina, trying to rein in her emotions so as to not continue to appear weak to not only her own son but to the ninja still in the room with them. First of all, don't add the suffix "un" to my name. You do not have the privilege to do so. Secondly, you are speaking to him, replied Naruto with an inward grin as he saw Kushina's reaction to his final statement. Why you're TT the Uzukage? BB, but that's impossible. There is no way you can be the Kage of an entire village at such a young age, yelled out Kushina in disbelief. She refused to believe the fact that he was a Kage for two main reasons. The first was the most obvious. Kages were usually considered to be SS rank and were amongst the most powerful people on the planet. For a boy of roughly 16 years of age to be so powerful was unfathomable for the current shinobi world. The second reason was that if he truly was the Kage 10, there was truly no way for him to permanently return to Konoha. If he were a simple ninja or even a missing ninja, then there was a possibility of him being pardoned and allowed to return to Konoha as a ninja through either an arranged marriage or some kind of treaty between villages. If he was the Uzukage, then such a possibility was forever out of reach. Of course I am. Ask anyone in the village and they will each tell you that I am the Uzukage, and all of the former Kirinin will tell you how I came to defeat the former Mizukage's army, the former Mizukage himself, as well as the Sanbi, with only one other for his assistance. And that was several years ago, and I have only grown more powerful as time has passed, explained Naruto with a smirk on his face, showing off his large canines capable of biting through the toughest of substances. Isn't that right, Mai? Kushina immediately turned towards to where Mai was sitting drinking what seemed to be a delicious cup of tea. At first it seemed that Mai took no notice of Kushina's persistent stare, but as the stare went on, one could notice how uncomfortable Mai was getting. Finally, as several veins popped out of her head in annoyance, she decided to respond Naruto's question in order to destroy any remaining hopes that Kushina had of getting her son home. Yes, Naruto-kun is the current Uzukage of Uzukage and will be for many years to come until he chooses a successor that he deems is worthy of such a responsibility, responded Mai before returning to her delightful cup of tea. See, there you have it. I am the current Uzukage of the revived Uzukage. Now are you going to proceed with your mission or not? Asked Naruto in slight annoyance, as he really didn't feel like arguing about his position to Inamika's piece of trash. I'll believe you if you defeat me in a spar, declared Kushina. Due to her stubbornness and thick-headedness, she may have had the evidence laying in front of her, but she was unwilling to accept it until she was certain beyond a doubt. She expected for Naruto to back down and tell her that this was all a ruse to try and rile her up or to prove her dedication to the mission. Yet all she got was a sinister grin that sent shivers down her spine. She felt as though she had awoken the predator and had suddenly become the prey. So you want a spar then? Then that is exactly what you will get. My annoyance to the village and any shinobi currently within the village to go to field number 10. Tell them there will be an entertaining event between a wolf and a mouse. We shall arrive there shortly, so make sure they hurry up, ordered Naruto without removing his predatory gaze from Kushina. All Mai did was smirk in response and shun out of the office and alert all the ninja and civilians within Azu to head towards the Uzukage's private training field. This was going to be an entertaining match indeed, except it would be more one-sided than anything. Everyone except Kushina knew that, but she wasn't willing to back down now. Not when she was so close. I hope you're ready to lose Namikaze-san, because I know for a fact that you are incapable of even injuring me. There is no way that you'll be able to defeat me, and I will make you realize that without an inkling of doubt. I recommend that you go at me with the intent to kill, because if you don't, the match will simply be a bore for my people, and it would simply not do for me to disappoint them now, would it? Teased Naruto as his tails playfully moved around in anticipation of the utter destruction they were going going to cause. I will not lose, Naruto. I just hope you are ready to own up to your loss and accept that you are not yet ready for such responsibility. And if I win, then you must come back home with me. You must come back to Konoha and live with us," stated Kushina with the utmost confidence, not willing to back down to her son. This only caused Naruto's to grow even more if it was possible. "Alright then, Namikaze-san, you've got yourself a deal. But you know what? Just to show how confident I am that I am going to win this spar of ours. If I lose, then not only do I go with you to Konoha, but so does the entire population of Azu. Every civilian and ninja that currently resides in Azu will join Konoha upon my defeat," declared Naruto, shocking Kushina that he was willing to do such a thing. She doubted that he would be able to do such a thing, but she decided to accept it, thinking that once he lost he would simply say that the last part of the wager was simply a joke. "Deal." And with that final word they were surrounded by a flash of light, and once the light vanished, the office was empty except for the clones of Naruto still working on the day's paperwork. "Hehehe, she is so screwed," said Naruto clone number 1. "You got that right," agreed Naruto clone number 2. "She'll probably be forced to surrender within 5 minutes of the beginning of the spar," stated the last clone. At the Uzukage's private training field, the entire field was surrounded by what seemed to be the entire village of Azu. Everyone was waiting in anticipation of the spar that was about to commence between the Uzukage and the wife of the current Hokage, Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze, the Red Habanero. Everyone knew who was going to win this fight, but they came anyways because they wanted to see just how dismayed their precious Uzukage was going to make her afterwards. After all, who could defeat a god? Light soon encompassed the entire arena, causing several of the civilians and a few shinobi to cover their eyes. Once the light faded, they could see their precious Uzukage standing there in all his glory, towering over Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze like a giant. Immediately everyone began to cheer for him, yelling out both his name as well as his title. "Now then, I see that everyone is here. Now there is no way I am letting you all stand here uncomfortably. So how about I make you an arena to witness the spar?" yelled out Naruto as he brought one hand out in front of him. All he did was snap, and suddenly all of the people of Azu were floating in the air. Naruto then brought up his other hand and snapped with that one as well, causing an entire stadium to begin to form from the earth, rising from below their feet. Within minutes there was an arena several times larger than the one in Konoha and several times more extravagant. There was also a special seating section for Naruto's student and family loved ones. So with one final snap, all the citizens were gently placed in their seats, causing another round of applause and cheers to sound through the entire arena. This entire show of power caused Kushina to become extremely nervous about Naruto's power and exactly what he was capable of. However, she refused to back down just yet. She also believed that he must have wasted an enormous amount of chakra and was simply using some type of seal to make it appear as though he used up no chakra at all, that or he simply activated seals that would have caused everything that had just happened to have happened. Now then, before we begin, I would like to inform all of you of something that you might find important. Namikaze-san and I have made a little wager. If I win, then she will finally accept the fact that I am the Uzukage. If she wins, then I will have to go back to Konoha with as a shinobi for that village, and so will all of you. Now before we begin, are there any objections? Declared Naruto with his arms spread out, showing them that he was not lying to them. Kushina was appalled at what Naruto had just pulled. She thought that some of the shinobi in the stands would try to attack him for doing something so foolish. However, what happened next was something that she absolutely could not have anticipated. "Go Uzukage Sama, you can win, kick her ass," roared out the crowd in approval of Naruto's declaration. None of them even doubted Naruto whatsoever. They all believed that he would win against her. They all even called him Uzukage-sama, further proving his claim of being Uzukage. Now that that is out of the way, how about we get this started? Now. As soon as the words came out of his mouth, Kushina quickly created what she thought to be a safe distance away from Naruto. Foolish human. There is nowhere she could possibly escape to that Naruto would be unable to find. She immediately created dozens of cage punch in order to distract Naruto, while she herself took out her blade and prepared for her attack. Meanwhile, Naruto was stuck dealing with a small battalion of Kushina clones that were using chakra chains as well as their own blades in futile attempts to make Naruto bleed. All Naruto did was dodge their attacks with a fluidity that is normally only seen in professional dancers. He was simply toying with her. She knew it. Her clones chains knew it. Naruto obviously knew it, hell even the audience knew it. So Kushina's clones decided to get serious. Immediately they stopped their attacks and began to surround him completely, leaving no room for escape. Not that Naruto was trying to escape, mind you. Once he was completely surrounded, hundreds of chains seemed to explode from their bodies, consuming their existence yet merging together around Naruto to form a dome that had many holes. Not unlike a fishing net, except the chains seemed to always be in constant motion, and it appeared as though some of them went underground. Uzumaki no Chansuteru, or Yoshi no Wana Uzumaki chain style. Fisherman's trap. Give up now, Naruto. There is no way you can escape that unharmed. If you so much as move, the chains will begin to strike from random locations. Give up now. I don't want to hurt you, exclaimed Kushina as she kept her distance between herself and her son. She still had about a dozen clones left on the field surrounding Naruto should he manage to escape, each of them covered in explosive tags in an attempt to intimidate Naruto. However, all Naruto did was throw his head back and laugh, and then came the chains to try and impale his body. Kushina's eyes widened in horror at what was about to occur. Her body began to move on its own, her right hand stretching forward in an attempt to reach him, in an attempt to save him. Her mouth was open in an attempt to yell, but no sound came out. Her own chains had already emerged from her back and from other parts of her body in an attempt to intercept the chains about to pierce her son's body. However, they collided with the surrounding chains, unwilling to let any attacks enter the dome. Time seemed to slow down in Kushina's eyes. The chain slowly approaching Naruto's chest, arms, legs, and head. At the last moment before the chains came into contact with his flesh, Kushina closed her eyes and allowed her tears to begin to leak out at her own foolishness and arrogance. Clang! Kushina's eyes immediately snapped wide open at sound of the chains hitting some kind of metallic substance. Yet imagine her surprise and amazement when she saw that the chains had only hit her son's skin rather than some indestructible metal. The chains seemed to have simply stopped upon contact with his skin, but upon closer observation Kushina noticed that the tips of her chains had become compressed. That would have to mean that her son's body was stronger than most metals in existence. Now the chakra chains that had come into contact with him were now turning silver in color and had begun to corrupt the rest of the jutsu that was currently holding Naruto captive. Surprised? Well, you shouldn't be. You have no idea what kind of training I've undergone as well as what my current abilities are. I will repeat what I said in my office. There is nothing you can do that could possibly injure me, let alone defeat me. However, knowing you won't simply give up, so I'll simply have to beat you into submission until I utterly crush your fighting spirit. Now, like I said earlier, come at me with intent to kill, taunted Naruto as Kushina's jutsu was now completely under his control and was no longer in a net-like shape but rather a large silver ball of chakra that simply floated around Naruto. He then reached out for the ball with his hand, and then after grasping the ball he got into pitcher position, a large smirk on his face as one could see his muscles flexing. Batter up, motherfucker, yelled out Naruto as he threw the sphere of condensed chakra chains at Kushina in a baseball-like fashion. The sphere flew at speeds that normal civilians and genin were unable to see, let alone react to. However, Kushina was no genin. She was a former ANBU captain and currently held the rank of Junin within the village of Kaniya, so she was easily able to avoid the incoming projectile by jumping a couple feet to her left. However, as soon as her feet touched the ground again, she immediately brought up both her arms in a desperate attempt to block whatever she had sent lunge at her. Imagine her surprise when it was one of the silver chakra chains that had been condensed into that ball. Unfortunately, as she now realized, her block was useless since the chain simply pushed against her arms as well as scraping away her skin, causing blood to explode from her arms and sending her crashing into the wall of the arena. Upon impact, a large crater was formed and Kushina's back arched in pain as she coughed up some blood. Uzumaki no Chansuteru, Takoboru Uzumaki chain style. Akabas ball. You really shouldn't underestimate me, Namake-san. You might just get killed if you do, chuckled Naruto as he stayed in the same place as when they began the spar. Oh, and by the way, duck. Kushina, realizing what he meant by that, immediately performed a shunshin. Mere seconds before a multitude of chains collided with where she was, causing the entire wall to begin to crumble and fall. The ball simply remained there with 7 chains protruding from its smooth surface. Kushina unsheathed her blade once more and held it with both hands before closing her eyes and taking a deep breath. She brought the blade in front of her and then slowly opened her eyes. She saw her target and was prepared to eliminate it. She rushed forward, lowering her blade to her right leg and prepared to face the incoming frenzy of chains. She anticipated anticipated to rush at her. The ball, rather than launch all its chains at her at once, sent out 4 chains while the other 3 stayed back, thus diverting Kushina's attention to only those 4 chains. She brought up her blade and slashed the first chain on her left before using her momentum to spin and slash downwards at the one to her right. She then pushed off her right leg and sliced through the remaining 2 chains. She kept running towards the ball, which she had analyzed to be the weak point of this jutsu, but then all of a sudden jumped up into the air and faced towards the ground. Within seconds the remaining 3 chains had burst up from under the ground and were now preparing to stab through her to end the fight. Just as Kushina was about to strike, she sensed the other 4 chains behind her ready to stab her as well. She looked back for a mere second and noticed that none of the chains had received any damage, telling her that either they could regenerate or they had simply not been affected by her previous attacks. They were closing in on her faster than she would have liked. Shit, I never thought he'd make me use this. I don't know whether to be proud or afraid of what he had to undergo to be able to do something like this at his age. Uzumaki Finjutsu, Owari no Kyoto no Dorgan, monstrous dragon of the end, yelled out Kushina moments before the chains pierced the thick hide of the monster she created from the chakra not only within her but the chakra within her surroundings as well. Kushina was now atop of the large beast that rivaled the size of the Kyuubi when she attacked Konoha several years ago. The beast had 4 large legs with claws, each the size of an immense tree and sharper than most blades known to man. There were 6 monstrous wings attached to monster, each emanating large quantities of chakra as though it were a shield protecting the wings from damage. The scales were each at least the size of a grown man and were as thick as a wall of concrete with a thicker molecular density than diamonds. Its entire surface was black with golden linings in between the scales. Its eyes shone with red sclera and black pupils and a golden slit going through the middle. Its mouth showed several rows of teeth, white in color yet becoming a dark red at the points. A large tail sprouted from the end of it with what seemed to be several blades sprouting out from the tail in random areas as well as on its back nearing the wings and the head. Atop of the mighty beast was Kushina with a smirk on her face and her arms crossed in front of her chest. She stood atop of it with chakra flowing through her feet to make sure she stayed on. The dragon gave a mighty roar before firing a beam of pure concentrated chakra into the sky, causing all the clouds above it to be pushed away in a circular manner. Afterwards, steam leaked out from the sides of its powerful jaws. If any of this unnerved or astounded Naruto, he hid it rather well beneath his bemused expression. However, rather than going onwards to attack Naruto, the dragon faced the ball of chakra and rather than launching another beam attack, it swung its wings towards the ball, launching hundreds of blades towards the chakra construct. In response, the construct created dozens of chains that began to deflect against the blades. Yet, as soon as the chains came into contact with the blades exploded, destroying the parts of the chain close enough to the blast. At this rate, the construct was unable to keep up with the damage taken, and once the storm of swords diminished, all that was left was a single chain, approximately 4 feet long. I'm impressed that you had enough chakra to activate the seal before it began to absorb chakra from its surroundings until finally becoming self-sustaining. Absolutely genius, however, stated Naruto before gathering his chakra around him. Yet, this time his chakra wasn't the silver it had been moments ago. No. Now it was as black as the night and as fluid as a shadow. Naruto's form soon disappeared from view as he was now within an orb of darkness. Slowly, the black chakra began to form what seemed to be large wings on the right and left sides, while in front, what resembled a bird's head came into shape. In the rear were 5 long feathers that resembled tails in length. The main color of the bird was a deep vermilion, while the points of some of the feathers became a shining silver that would reflect the light in such a way that they appeared to be silver flames. The 5 long feathers in the rear began as vermilion in color, but the farther away from the rear, the darker it became until it reached the black as dark as the night and as wicked as Konoha's very existence. Its facial feathers were of the same design as the rest of its body. However, the feathers around its eyes were significantly darker, almost like they were covered by soot or ashes. The eyes were a bright vibrant blue that were not unlike the color of Naruto's eyes before he had begun his evolution into the Juubi. And finally the beak. It was a reflective silver color, similar to steel or iron, yet seemed to have the fluidity of chakra when in its visible form. In size the creature was equal if not slightly larger than the dragon that Kushina rode upon. "You're 1,000 years too early to even think about challenging me," stated Naruto as he materialized on a throne made out of pure obsidian that seemingly came out of the giant bird's back. The throne seemed to have the design of hundreds of swords melted down and placed together in a random disarray of harmonic chaos. While all having different designs and clearing different creators, they all somehow seemed to belong together, all gathered together under one flag, under one village, under one man. Naruto Okami. "Now then, let's get the show on the road, shall we, Namikaze-san?" No sooner had Naruto said that had Kushina begun her onslaught of chakra chains, shadow clones also using chakra chains, and random elemental attacks launched by the monstrosity she was riding. Naruto smirked at her futile attempts to subdue him and his creation and responded in tandem. Raising his hand into the air, he gave the command to the bird for it to take flight immediately while he sent out a clone of his own to take care of Kushina's clones. While he gazed upon his clone handling its own against their opponents, the original Naruto decided to sate his growing appetite with some of his favorite food, a full rack of smoked ribs, carefully drizzled in the most exquisite barbecue sauce obtained from the western continents, and cooked for a minimum of 12 hours. "Kami, I love being a god. I can have whatever the fuck I want, whenever the fuck I want, exactly how I want it without suffering any consequences whatsoever," said Naruto in a sing-song tone as licked his fangs in preparation for the meal in front of him. With the Naruto clone, the moment he was created he jumped off from the head of the eagle and dove straight towards a massive army of chains with chains of his own. Black chains that had silver tips that resembled a scorpion's tail in structure. He had hundreds of chains explode from his back while dozens of chains emerged from each of his hands. Kushina's chains collided with Naruto's one by one, and to her surprise they were each destroyed in the head-on collisions when they came in contact with the silver tip. So in response she had the chains attempt to destroy Naruto's chains from the black links that connected them. However, this too proved to be just as fruitless, as when the chains came into contact with the obsidian-like chains they corroded away at the mere touch of it until the entire chain was destroyed along with the clone if the clone didn't break away from her chain fast enough. What is this? How is that he not only has two separate chakras but is able to use them together in perfect harmony at the mere age of 15? This is simply inconceivable. He is beyond genius. This is something more, possibly something more than what even I can handle, thought Kushina as she attempted to strike down her opponent's clone, even though each attempt proving only to be as fruitless at the last. Biting her lip in frustration, Kushina began to think of ways to at least defeat the clone in front of her without depleting her reserves nor her dragon's reserves, whilst still causing enough destruction to show Naruto who is boss. While she was pondering, Naruto's clone had taken out all of her clones save for 3 and had yet to break a sweat, let alone be injured. He was even able to deflect the dragon's elemental blasts by simply creating a shield out of his chains around himself. It seemed as though the tips of the chains were absorbing some of the elemental chakra from the attacks and then changed color in accordance to the chakra they absorbed. Some were glowing red, some were glowing blue, and others were simply transparent from absorbing fire, lightning and wind respectively. Alright, as much fun as this little dance of ours has been, I think we've just about reached the conclusion to all of this. Now do me a favor and burn, bitch, roared out Naruto as he launched out his hundreds of chains towards the dragon as they all became consumed in the element they absorbed, approaching the dragon like comets of fire, lightning, and wind. The 3 remaining clones moved in front of the incoming onslaught of destruction in an attempt to shield the dragon and the original from utter annihilation. Using their last remaining chakra they formed a shield made from their chakra chains while they disappeared, having themselves become the shield. The shield completely encompassed the dragon, protecting it from the incoming dangers. In response to this, Naruto simply had the hundreds of chains combine into only a dozen drill-like projectiles covered in fire and lightning, since the wind merely caused the fire to burn brighter and hotter. Within moments the drills collided with the barrier, causing cracks to form all throughout, yet it held. However, each second that passed the barrier only grew to be more feeble than the last, until finally the barrier shattered like glass and dissipated like smoke into the wind. Without anything to protect it any longer, the dragon received the full force of the attack as it tore into its scales and flesh. After a few moments the dragon was impaled by most of the drills, while a couple laid back by the Naruto clone as a form of protection. Naruto simply floated there with a smirk on his face as he gazed upon his handiwork, and then suddenly, his eyes widened slightly in surprise. Where the fuck did she go? Kushina was no longer atop of her dragon. In fact, she was currently nowhere in sight. He began to remove his chains from the dead beast in order to find Kushina, or at least, he tried to. He soon found that he could not remove his chains from the carcass, and for some other reason he was unable to detach himself from the chains. What the flying fuck? Why can't I remove myself from these damn things? Roared out Naruto as he began to lose his temper with each failed attempt to remove both himself and his chains from the dragon. It was at that moment that Naruto realized why neither he nor his chains could separate. That fucking dragon is sucking in my chakra. She must know that in doing so the fucking piece of shit will explode from absorbing too much chakra, which is why she escaped while I couldn't see her. That clever little bitch, ranted Naruto as he began being pulled ever closer to the dragon's body, and the closer he got, the more he began to glow. He was returning to being pure chakra. At least it isn't the worst of ways to go. Besides, I'm just a clone, so she didn't realm gain anything there since I'm only about 10% as powerful as the original. Were his final thoughts as returned to his original form as was finally fully absorbed by the dragon. Throughout this entire time the dragon was still slain, but it kept floating due to the chakra sustaining it as well as the chakra it was now absorbing. Also due to the chakra it had absorbed, it was becoming silver in color, but slowly there appeared black cracks around the dragon's scales. Through the cracks there was black chakra released in bursts, similar to the solar flares released by the sun and appearing similar to the flames of Amaterasu. Soon the dragon was completely black and the bursts of chakra returned inside the dragon before finally expanding in a large flash of darkness that quickly spread across the stadium and towards the residents of the village. Immediately the original Naruto snapped his fingers and suddenly the void of destruction was teleported from where it was to a distance of approximately 300 miles away from the village. It continued to grow in size until it was easily twice the size of Naruto when he was in his Biju form. Once it reached that size it condensed into an orb impossible to see from their current distance. It was at the moment that the true carnage began. The orb finally released all of the pent-up energy that it had stored within. The explosion resembled that of a supernova. The heat from the blast was traveling at speeds unrivaled by any living thing and absolutely incinerated anything within its range. Naruto barely reacted fast enough to put up a protective shield around the entire village to shield them from the effects of the blast. The explosion completely enveloped them like a wave of pure chakra. Everyone shielded their eyes from the massive light that would have blinded them had they looked for much longer. After several minutes the explosion died down and the aftermath was revealed. Everything around the village was turned to ash and crater was at least a mile deep from their point of view and they were at the mere edge of the destruction. Kushina was horrified at the destruction she had inadvertently caused to her home village. She had caused its destruction and was heartbroken at that fact. She thought that she would hear the cries of anger or despair from the crowd or receive the beating of her life from Naruto. So imagine her surprise when Naruto began laughing at her facial reaction. How can you possibly be laughing? The village was destroyed as well as most of the surrounding landscape, yelled out Kushina in a confused rage. Well, that's simple. This is an illusion, stated Naruto before simply snapping his fingers, causing the landscape and the village to return without a single scratch, as if the explosion never happened. And then just as quickly, it all disappeared. Their only surroundings were a vast white emptiness. Do you want the most powerful, most dangerous genjutsu is Namikaze-san? It's not the one that shows the dead rising from the ground and taking you to hell. It's not the one where a giant meteor is falling from the heavens, about to crush you. It isn't even the one that causes you to suffer weeks of torture in a matter of seconds. You see, the best genjutsu is the one that no one sees through because it's far too realistic and elaborate for most to be capable of pulling off. And that's exactly what happened here. You've uttered this little genjutsu since you challenged me to a spar, and outside of this jutsu we are still in my office and only a few minutes have passed since this was casted, explained Naruto with a sinister smirk on his face. Kushina at this point was absolutely floored. Not only had she been defeated by her son, but he had defeated her with what was considered to be one of the weakest types of jutsu, genjutsu. However, now that she knew this was a genjutsu, then all she had to do was disrupt her chakra flow to escape. Oh, and before I forget, it's impossible to escape this illusion without either the permission of the caster or without snapping the strings that bind you. You see, you and everyone else in the world are entangled in a web of strings. You're limited by the strings that bind you like puppets. Strings forged from regret, doubt, pain, and weakness. But me? I had strings on me, but now I'm free, bitch. I'm no longer the one controlled by the strings. Now I'm the one pulling the strings, making the rest of you dance to the tune I play. The only way to break through this illusion is to snap the strings that hold you back, and you can't even do that. But luckily for you, you won't have to. Naruto informed Kushina as he simply sat down on a leather recliner and moved to a full laid-back position that slightly confused her until what he had just stated finally registered into her mind. What do you mean by the strings that hold me back? What is holding me back? And what do you mean that I won't have to? Asked Kushina in confusion as she prepared for another fight, even though she knew it would be useless in the end. Well, I am not letting you go, you fool. I am simply returning you to your place on the board. And I'm also going to alter your memories a little bit. I need to make sure that Kanaya doesn't know about my position in this village. At least not yet anyways. So while we are having this conversation, the real me is using a certain seal that he developed in order to seal certain parts of your memories and replacing them with substitutes until he decides that those substitutes are no longer necessary. Oh, and would you look at that? Time's up, Namikaze-san. Before Kushina could ask anything else, she felt herself being sent back to her physical body before finally collapsing due to the seal that Naruto placed on her. She had collapsed into his chest with a peaceful expression on her face. Naruto looked at her with conflicting emotions, which he quickly buried before he created a clone and had it carry Kushina to the hotel room he had set up for her. Now once she wakes up, you are to escort her around the village for the rest of the day before finally escorting her back to her hotel room. Once that is done, you wait until the following morning before you escort her to the entrance so that she may be on her way back to Kanaya. Now then, I should inform the original of our progress on this end. Good day, was the last thing that clone said before poofing out existence, and another one appeared out of the shadows to take his place. Of course he was crying tears because of the horrendous amount of paperwork in front of him. My simply giggled at his antics before walking out of his office and heading towards her assigned post. It's never boring here, that's for sure. With the original Naruto was currently having a friendly spar with a fellow Uzumaki when he received the sudden influx of memories. He suddenly began to chuckle as he saw how his clone had decided to handle the situation with the Namikaze bitch. He also noticed, however, that clone was one of his more forgiving clones, which explained the conflicting emotions it had about Kushina. However, such weak feelings will do nothing to shake his resolve about their fates. Hey shithead, pay attention when I'm kicking your ass, yelled out the other Uzumaki as she roundhouse kicked him in the face. Or at least she tried to, when just before she actually made contact with his skin he had instinctively backhanded her across the face, sending her flying into the closest wall to her right, which was at least 40 feet away from she originally was. When she crashed into the wall, she created a human-shaped dent with cracks going throughout that section of wall. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your point of view, she stayed conscious thanks to all the training she went through under Naruto's firm merciless hand. Oh shit, she'll never let me hear the end of that. Sigh. Might as well heal her wounds and then try to please her with a popsicle or two and hope for the best, thought Naruto in absolute dread. While she couldn't hurt him and she knew it, she could very easily make his life a living hell with her pranks. He regretted the fact that he taught all the secrets of pranking. He was too good of a teacher in the pranks that she can now come up with actually scare Naruto a little bit. So after swallowing his fear, he walked up to the girl who was now sitting on the ground with birds flying above her head in circles and began to heal her. Sorry about that, Tayuya-chan. I was thinking about something too deeply, I guess, explained Naruto nervously as he was healing the now identified Tayuya Uzumaki. She was currently 16 years of age and wore black A&B style pants that were skin tight and showed her shapely ass. For footwear, she had a dark blue pair of ninja sandals. Up top she was wearing a dark blue sports bra, a necklace in the shape of a skull and was made out of a silver alloy, and black wrappings wrapped around her hands and arms up to just below the elbow. She was a high below C cup and her blood red hair reached to about mid-back with one bang going down the middle of her face and two others framing her face. Her hair was also put into a ponytail in the back. Her eyes were a dark brown. Naruto in this case had his silver hair down to a little bit past the shoulders and his eyes were the same ice blue they had been since his first assimilation of the first Juubi his chakra and his fangs were slightly visible from under his lip. He was wearing a sleeveless black hoodie with the hood currently down, and on each side of the hood was an image of his Juubi drawn in silver. On his arms he was wearing the same black leather-type gauntlets with silver chains wrapped around them. He wore black baggy pants with several pockets in them, and each pocket was lined in silver. For footwear he had on a pair of black combat boots with red linings. His ears and his tails were hidden under a genjutsu rather than hidden within his body, because according to Naruto it wasn't comfortable enough. "You dumbass, shouldn't you know better than to hit your girlfriend?" taunted Tayuya in an effort to rile him up. This of course had the desired effect on Naruto. He hung his head in slight depression as his hair shadowed his eyes from view and a depressing aura surrounded him. She threw her head back and laughed at his antics before running her hand through his hair. "But you're my dumbass, so you're forgiven. On one condition." Naruto released a breath he didn't realize he was holding, and once she said he was forgiven. "Of course, anything." Tayuya moved in closer with a slight blush on her face until she was whispering into his ear. It must have been horrible because a shit-eating grin was plastered onto his face and blood began to droop out of his nose a little bit. "Of course, my lady. Onwards to paradise." "Hi-ho, Silver Way!" yelled out Naruto as he carried Tayuya in the bridal position and sprinted to an undisclosed location. Cough cough, the bedroom. Cough cough. Or at least that is what they were planning on going before they were stopped by someone who looked to be slightly older than they were. He was wearing a baggy white shirt that had a V-neck that went down to his stomach while the sleeves reached down to his wrists. He had a few markings on his chest that were visible, and he wore black A&Bu style pants with black ninja sandals. To complete the outfit he wore a purple rope like a belt and a pretzel knot. The boy had long white hair that reached his upper back and 2 red dots on his forehead. He had green eyes and a red outlining his eyes, similar to a certain sage's sage mode. "Hurry up and tell us what you want, Kimimaro, so that Tayuya and I can enjoy ourselves in certain extracurricular activities," said Naruto in an exasperated tone of voice at being cock-blocked by someone that he didn't particularly like. "Orochimaru-sama has summoned 3 of us to his chambers. We are to go there immediately," stated Kimimaro in a monotone fashion which normally would have creeped out anyone else, but these were already used to it. Sigh. "That snake pedo can't let us enjoy ourselves before trying to shower us in pedophilic gayness, can he? Oh well, looks like we'll have to continue this later, Tayu-chan," stated Naruto as he put her down and followed Kimimaro with Tayuya right behind him. "Fine, but when we finally get to it you better place the silencer seals for 8 hours at least, because I sure won't stop until I black out," declared Tayuya in a lusty tone as she slapped his ass. All of this only caused Naruto to smirk and mentally challenged himself to outlast her. Normally he could do so extremely easily, but currently his body is completely covered in seals and visible to anyone but those he wishes to see. Thanks to all of those seals, all of his power was limited to that of a wave operative. At that point it was a simple matter of hiding his true strength and chakra levels from Orochimaru. He couldn't wait to see the look on Orochimaru's face once he finds out that he's the Izukage. However, the thought brought a frown to Naruto's face. He needed to tell Tayuya the truth about who and what he is. He needed to do it soon because he'd rather not have her learn about it from someone else. That would truly break her heart. "We are here," stated Kimimaro before he opened the door to Orochimaru's chambers and entered with the other 2 hot on his tail. Inside the rather large room was a throne covered in snake-like designs, and sitting on the throne, none other than Orochimaru the Snake Sannin. He had silky black hair that reached to his mid-back and pale skin. He had purple markings around his eyes. He wore a short-sleeve beige shirt that reached his knees and split at the sides. Underneath that he wore a long-sleeve black shirt. He wore black ninja pants that were taped over at the shins with white tape. He wore closed-toed ninja sandals, and like Kimimaro he wore the purple pretzel rope of pedophilia. "Orochimaru-sama," said Kimimaro as he got on his knee and bowed as though he was worshipping a deity, while Tayuya reluctantly got into the same position knowing she could beat Orochimaru. Naruto, however, simply stood there uncaring of the scene before him, while on the inside he was doing his best from exploding and killing the man for forcing his lover to bow to him. This action of course angered Kimimaro and worried Tayuya, but it seemed to amuse Orochimaru. He didn't much care if Naruto bowed to him. So long as he followed orders it was fine. "Rise. Now then, let's get to why I called the 3 of you down here. The Chunin exams are coming up soon and I will be sending the 3 of you as a team as well as the other genin team that I have at my disposal proposal. Your mission is to take as much of the competition as possible but leave Tsuruuchi unharmed. If she is harmed then each of you will suffer my wrath. You will be leaving for Konoha in a week's time. Now leave my sight," explained Orochimaru before sending them on their way. "Of course Orochimaru-sama," responded Kimimaro as he bowed once more to his Pado deity before leaving with Tayuya following right on his heel and Naruto walking at a leisurely pace. Once they were outside of the room, Naruto was in for a shitstorm. He was thrown against the wall by Kimimaro and had a blade made out of bone pressed against his throat. Tayuya was about to intervene but Naruto raised his hand signaling her to wait. "Mama Kimi-chan, why so serious?" asked Naruto with his annoying shit-eating grin. Kimimaro pressed his blade on Naruto's throat with more force, enough to shed blood with most shinobi. Of course Naruto wasn't most shinobi, so the blade wasn't doing anything to make him uncomfortable, let alone bleed. The blade, however, was beginning to crack from the pressure. At this development Kimimaro's eyes widened and he jumped back in preparation for an attack, discarding the blade and pointed all 10 of his fingers at his target. Naruto of course simply stood there with his arms behind his head and his damn grin still plastered on his face. He was ready for any amount of skill that Kimimaro was about to demonstrate, even with the limitations that he had placed on himself. However, he really wanted to enjoy his alone time with Tayu-chan, so he decided against kicking Kimi-chan's ass at the moment and decided to intimidate the fuck out of the guy for now. So he directed approximately 15% of his killing intent and directed all of it to just Kimimaro, and boy was the fucker steps away from shitting his pants. What the hell is this? This killing intent is far too powerful to belong to as someone of his age. This killing intent is on par with Orochimaru-sama's. There is no way I could possibly beat him this way. I have to retreat while he lets me. Though Kimimaro frantically as he put his hands down and charged chakra into his feet before running away to an unknown location. Unfortunately for him, he would never be able to forget those eyes that pierced what was left of his soul. Cold blue eyes that seemed to lower the temperature of the room by 30 degrees at least and radiated power from them. It felt as though he could no longer breathe and as if he was being frozen all the way down to the bone. As if a predator was stalking him, in search for an easy lunch. One thing was for sure now, Naruto was not what he seemed, and it was doubtful that anyone truly controlled him or ordered him to do anything. Not even the deity that he believes in, Orochimaru. "Now that we are alone, Tayu-chan, how about we start having some fun? Or would you rather wait until we actually get into the bedroom?" asked Naruto with his perverted grin on his face as he wrapped his arm around Tayuya's waist and pressed her body against his own. So you can expect his surprise when she put her hands on his chest and pushed him away from her before slapping high across the cheek. This of course did nothing to him physically, however this severely confused him. "You idiot, you scared the fucking living shit out of me when you ignored Orochimaru's orders. I thought that he would kill you for doing so. I was so afraid that I was going to lose you. And then right now when Kimimaro got all pissy and tried to kill you, how could you scare me like that?" yelled Tayuya as tears began streaming down her cheeks. Just as she had begun opening herself up again to someone just nearly killed himself twice within minutes of each other, and then he had the gall of asking her if she was in the mood to do it in the middle of the hallway or run to the bedroom. That was all Naruto said during her outburst, and when she was finished yelling at him he did the only thing that he could. He embraced her and put her head to his chest. He couldn't believe that he had forgotten how mortal she believed him to be. How weak she actually though he was. Well, not necessarily weak, just not as strong as I actually am. Had I simply told her the truth by now. Sigh. I guess at this point there's no better time than the present, thought Naruto before he teleported them back to their room. "Tayu-chan, sit down please," Naruto asked her kindly in a hope that she would listen to him the first time and that he wouldn't have to shake her up more than she already was. "Why the fuck should I do that? You were being an idiot earlier and you think that I'm going to listen to why?" "Tayuya, sit the fuck down right fucking now," yelled Naruto with his hair shadowing his eyes and his hands clenched in anger. Tayuya sat down onto the bed. Tears continued to cascading down her cheeks. She had a shocked look upon her face, as if surprised or even horrified at the fact that her Naruto had yelled at her. He knew her past and yet he just did what to her was the unthinkable. "Look, I know that I just yelled at you and I know that no one should ever yell at you, especially me. But I needed you to listen. I need you to know who I really am, Tayuya. What I really am. So please, for the next hour or so I need you to listen to what I have to say. After that you can yell at me all you want. You can hit me all you want. You can do whatever you want so long as you listen to what I have to say, declared Naruto as he created a chair out of seemingly nothing, surprising Tayuya for a little bit before she simply assumed he brought it out of one of his seals, although she didn't understand why it didn't cause a poof of smoke like it usually did. Tayuya, when I first arrived here, do you remember how powerful I seemed? Because if you do, then you should have figured out by now that I haven't gotten any stronger. You can even check my chakra levels. You'll notice that they haven't changed at all since I arrived here 2 years ago. You also should have noticed that there are 10 seals on my person that are literally glowing with some form of energy that you know isn't chakra. You know nothing about my past and you've constantly asked me. Well, it is time for me to tell you, said Naruto as he began to take off his shirt, revealing all of his visible seals before channeling some of his unknown energy, which revealed several more seals, namely 10. For the next few hours Naruto told Tayuya everything about the Juubi, Konoha, his childhood there, his life without his family, as well as his multiple suicide attempts when he was younger. Several times it seemed as though Tayuya was going to break down crying, but she stayed strong because Naruto asked her to listen to him, and that was what she was going to do. He told her about his first meeting with Yuki as well as his training. He told about how he was now the Nidaime Juubi. He showed her his true fangs, ears, and tails. He showed her his doujutsu. He then told about how he left that pathetic village while humiliating several of the most powerful shinobi alive and coming out without so much as a scratch on him. He told her about his encounter with Haku and Zabuza. He told her about his relationships with both Haku and Yuki as well as his relationship with Sayuri. He told her about his time in Kiri during the end of the war, which he was responsible for ending. He told her how he single-handedly destroyed the last Mizukage as well as the Sanbi without so much as breaking a sweat. He told her about his brother that lived within him that was born out of his darkness. He told her how when he finally gained his final tail he had to fight against his brother. He told her how he was forced to defeat his brother. He told her how he had to kill the brother that had been with him through thick and thin. He told her how he had merged Kurigakure with Azushiagakure in order to revive Azu. He told her how he was the Azukage. He told her about everything he planned to do. ND, that's all that there is to know about me. Hopefully that's answered most of the questions you've asked over the past couple years. That should also explain to you why I was ignoring Orochimaru early as well as not giving a shit when Kimi-chan tried to kill me. I'm sorry for not telling you this sooner, but I didn't really have any way to say it, at least not until now, finished Naruto. And as soon as he finished, Tayuya crashed into him with tears flowing down her cheeks, her face hidden in his chest while she wrapped her arms around waist. She sobbed into his chest for the next few minutes while Naruto did his best to comfort her. At the beginning she was being incomprehensible, but after those few minutes of sobbing she successfully calmed down enough to be understandable. I can't believe that those stupid bastards did that to you. How could they have abandoned their only son? That damn village is going to fucking burn for what they dared to do to my Naruto KOI. I'll collapse that entire village under a volcano. Nobody fucks with my husband, roared out Tayuya as her eyes began to glow a chestnut brown filled with her raging chakra. However, an unexpected development revealed itself when her eyes became outlined in a reddish-orange color, which hinted upon a possible Kekkei Genkai that Naruto was planning on pointing out later, but now he was planning on enjoying the moment for as long as possible. Now I am pissed and am also unbelievable turned on by the fact that you are basically a god as well as the most powerful person on the planet. So right now, before we have any more discussions, any more arguments, any more interruptions, you, Naruto Okami, are going to fuck my brains out right here in this room, whether it's on this bed, on the floor, on the wall, on the ceiling, hell even in the bathroom, declared Tayuya with a sultry tone before she smashed her lips with Naruto's with her hands on Naruto's cheeks and Naruto's hands groping her ass, eliciting a moan from Tayuya. Lemon ahead. This is the warning for a lemon that will begin in a few lines. If you don't want to read or don't like it, then all you have to do is skip to the next bold section. You have been warned. Naruto, of course, at this moment held nothing back as he picked her up by her ass and began carrying towards the bed while she wrapped her legs around his waist. He laid her down on her back on the back while she was still wrapped around him. He removed a sleeveless hoodie and used one of his tails to throw it into a random corner of the room. His other tails began to remove her sports bra and ripped her pants to shreds, revealing her perfectly round and perky pink nipples and her striped pink panties. Harem, didn't think you'd actually wear these. Well then you'll definitely be getting a reward for this, stated Naruto as he was pleasantly surprised by the fact that she actually wore the panties that he he bought for her. He would have bought her a matching bra, but Tayuya didn't like wearing bras since they made her feel uncomfortable. Ah, WLT, they were so see comfortable now, rip them off and fuck me, moaned out Tayuya as she gripped the sheets with her arms pinned down by two of his tails and her breasts being teased and massaged by two other tails. Naruto decided to tease her some more before finally giving her dessert. He put his hands towards her panties before shredding it to pieces and pumping his fingers deep into her pussy, causing her to buck her hips and moan in ecstasy. At first he went with 2 fingers, but then picked up his pace and then inserted another finger, causing her moan even louder than before. His hands were basically a blur and her pussy along with its nearby surroundings were completely soaked. He then muffled her moans with a mind-searing kiss that pierced her mouth and battled her tongue for dominance. He also moved his other hand to her left nipple and began to pinch it for some fun. This of course caused her moans to increase in consistency and in ferocity, even though they were muffled by Naruto's mouth. Soon enough her hips began to buck even faster than before and she gripped the sheets even harder that her fists began become white. Naruto could tell she was close, so he decided to make sure this one went out with a bang. He removed his hand from her left nipple and moved it towards her clit, which her toyed with relentlessly. Her eyes rolled to the back of her head and her back arched as she came and squirted all over his abdomen. He came back up for air and saw her covered in sweat now. I see came. Ha ha ha, painted out Tayuya as her mind at the moment was a blank and the entire room was basically white at this point due to her complete ecstasy. Now then, I guess it's time for your injection, Tayu-chan, grinned Naruto as he removed his pants and his boxers, revealing his 10-inch dick that stood at salute. Wait, I'm still too sensitive, moaned out Tayuya with her eyes widened in surprise and horror at the kind of pleasure she would be feeling if that entered her right after she came. Too fucking bad, was all Naruto said before he plunged his dick inside of her all the way down to the base. Her back arched once more and her eyes rolled into the back of her head. Drool began to flow down her chin as her brain shut down from pleasure overload, and the only part of her that was awake was her sexual side, which was about 40% of her mind. He plunged in and out of her and created a dildo the same size and length and thickness as his own dick and then plunged it into her ass before turning it into a vibrator that was literally driving her to a pleasure-filled insanity. He then began to suck on her breasts and also continued to play with her clit. This continued for several more minutes before Tayuya's brain began to kick in again, and then her conscious mind began to register the huge amounts of pleasure she was in because of this god that was currently doing exactly what she was asking for, fucking her brains out. YESSSSSSS Murioi FUUUUUCCCKKKKK me herder, screamed out Tayuya as she moved her hips to match his rhythm and wrapped her arms around his head and pressed him closer to her bountiful breasts. Naruto of course did nothing to voice any kind of disapproval. He went with the flow and up his thrusts as he sensed his first load coming up. Tayuya also must have sensed this since her legs grip around his waist tightened in anticipation of what was coming. Inside, come inside me. Fuck, I'm gonna see you screamed out Tayuya in complete pleasure as with each thrust she inched closer and closer to orgasming. Naruto's thrusts grew faster and faster with each second until he finally ended it with one deep thrust into her vagina, reaching all the way inside of her womb before finally releasing his seed into her womb, filling it to the brim and stretching it to about the size it would be had Tayuya been 3 months pregnant, and then overflowing out of her vagina and onto the bed. Pulling his dick out of her pussy caused the rest of the cum begin pooling out onto the bed and then onto the floor. Before any more came out of her vagina, she sexily crawled over to his still hard cock and began giving him a deep throat, releasing some slutty slurping sounds that definitely helped keep Naruto nice and hard. Oh yeah, this will definitely be a great 9 hours. Ooh FUUUCCKKK. Your blowjobs are always amazing, Tayuya, moaned out Naruto as he grabbed the back of her head and sped up with her sucking. She skillfully used her tongue to play with the shaft and used her hands to stimulate the balls. Schlurp, schlurp was the only sound coming out of Tayuya's mouth at the moment as she was sucking on his dick as though it were a 10-inch lollipop. She had a large amount of practice from previous sex sessions and bored afternoons and nights and even mornings whenever he had morning wood, which was every morning. So with little discomfort she was able to take in his entire dick down her throat, and she loved every second of it. She also felt how his dick was beginning to pulse and knew that he was close to releasing his delicious seed down her throat and into her stomach. So in order to get her delicious snack sooner, she began bobbing her head faster and faster as well as farther so that she would go from the beginning of his head all the way down to his face each plunge. Oh yeah, keep it up Tayuya. Oh fuck, I am gonna come, roared out Naruto as his hands pushed Tayuya's head all the face down to his base and shot out his second load for that session like a Suiton jutsu and filled up her stomach, making her stomach bulge and causing her to like she was 3 months pregnant once before. Once again it started being released out her ass and overflowing out her mouth and bloating her cheeks. Her eyes rolled to the back of her head and his dick is released from her mouth with loud resounding pop. The cum was trying to escape through her mouth, so she closed it off and swallowed it down, willing it to go stay in her stomach or at the very least leave through her other hole. Don't worry Tayuya, we still got at least another 8 hours to go before we stop. After all, that is what you asked for, right? Asked Naruto sarcastically with a lustful grin as he down on the chair he had created earlier, motioning for her to sit down on his dick, and she did so with a smirk on her face. She got up from the bed with her hair in a mess, cum dripping down from her chin and onto her juicy, right breasts that bounced up and down and her nipples that stood at salute, her hips swaying with each step as his sperm dripped down her vagina onto the floor and down her legs. Her butt jiggled with each step and more cum flowing out her ass and down her legs. She got the chair and brought her right leg up to the side of the chair before she brought up her other leg and slowly lowered her entrance to his dick with a sex-crazed look in her eyes. Fuck yeah it is. And with she slammed herself all the way down to his base with his dick reaching even deeper than before, all the way to the end of her womb, her head arching back in pure pleasure as she wrapped her arms around his neck. She moved her hips while Naruto stayed completely stationary with that grin on his face, her breasts bouncing up and down in front of him a mesmerizing manner. He ass jiggling each time she slammed her vagina down on his dick. Moaned out Tayuya as she kept on coming with each time she got penetrated by Naruto's dick. More. She increased in her intensity as she neared another orgasm before Naruto got up while using his tails to make sure she didn't fall off his dick and onto the floor. He pressed up against the wall before thrusting into her like a madman. She had no hope after that as she released a huge orgasm and nearly passing out from the experience. That is until he pulled out of her and plunged his entire dick inside of her ass with a single thrust. For the next few hours he would continue to fuck her brains out in all sorts of positions and in all of her holes until she was completely covered in cum as well as filled with it. They fucked in the bed, in the chair, in the bath, on the toilet, on the walls, and even on the ceilings. By the time they finished, all Tayuya could think about was sex, and she completely incomprehensible at that point too. Now Naruto had just finished releasing his 60th load into her ass before it leaked out of both her ass and her mouth. He then washed her up and carried her to the bed where she would wake up in several hours and then lie down next to her. That is until he thought of a better position. He turned her over onto her side and then spooned her while placing his dick inside her warm and cozy vagina. I fucking love being the main character. That's the end guys. If you enjoyed, like and subscribe for more. This is Maelstrom signing off.